Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode is appropriate for all ages.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Animation Kimmunication. Unless you're watching this in the future and you've been marathoning a lot and this week has been like a day or two. That's my ice-breaking joke. So I'm KP as usual, and then Lauren's here as usual.
Yep. Hi.
Lauren, say hi.
I said hi.
Oh, okay.
Did you not hear me say hi?
No, I didn't hear you.
Oh no, don't tell me our call's gonna be dropping out.
Say
Knock on
hi,
wood,
awkward
don't
noise.
do it.
Like, oh, Lauren was a figment of in my
No, I
imagination
said hi.
the whole time.
I said hi. But anyway, it's funny. This episode today has been kind of like a long time coming. We've been trying to make sure that this whole thing worked in a schedule for everybody. So I'm glad it's able to finally happen today.
We did it.
So anyway, I'd like to briefly introduce our guest and I'll allow him to introduce himself as well. But today we have Isaac, aka Watso Videos. Why don't you do a little brief introduction for all of our new listeners or anybody who is not familiar with your work yet?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Isaac Carlson. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm a massive Disney animation, movie, and theme parks fan. And specifically, over the past 5 years, I've been making videos on YouTube about characters' full stories, theories around Disney movies, and breaking down all of the different elements that get me really excited about watching those shows. It's an extremely fun thing that I'm blessed to be able to do. And one of the things that I grew up really enjoying was Kim Possible. So one of our trips, I forgot where it was, but we had a VHS with 3 Kim Possible episodes on it. And that my brother and I would watch a lot. So I've been enjoying animation, Kim Possible, and Disney for a very, very long time.
Okay, well that's good to hear. I'm glad we kind of got on the same, we start off on the same page. Yeah, because it's funny because people kind of forget that sometimes the username is related to that. So a lot of times, people are like, "What are some good shows to watch during quarantine?" I'm just like, like, can you read? So it's kind of fun. Or people will get into Kim Possible specifically because they're a fan of the channel or whatever, which is always good to hear. It makes my heart happy. So yeah, like we've been talking on and off for like probably 6 months or so between, I think you thought, I wasn't a real person for a little bit, and then we finally scheduled this podcast. So I'm glad, we finally did it, and you're in the right place, not the wrong place. You're in the right place because Lauren and I are both animators and huge Disney nuts too. So like we're the kind of I think I've said this before, but we're the kind of nerds that can pick out the voice actors they use in the parks and name them by name and like talk about them in name, and like all the other people are just like, what are they doing? Why are they weird like this? So
Yeah, every fandom you can go down lots of different roads. There's always like more information that you can go down, and that's fascinating. I don't think I've heard of anyone that has that type of skill of being able to recognize the voice actors like that. That's super cool.
Oh yeah. I'm surprised that Lauren. I mean, it's a cool party trick, I guess. But like Lauren and I share that skill. We actually one of the conventions we actually met Jim Cummings in person. He's a really cool dude. So he did for Lauren or something. But anyway, that's a thing that's happened. So if you have any questions about Kim Possible, you can ask me if they come up. So Lauren usually reads the questions, and then we'll go from there. So Lauren, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I guess where to start would be what inspired you to pursue creating theories and analysis for animated content? Particularly, I mean, I think it's no surprise that Disney is so intriguing and so in depth in a lot of their stories and their lore, but at the same time, it's like, what inspired you in particular to pursue it?
Sure. So when I initially decided I wanted to start making YouTube videos, it was because I had seen other um like other really interesting little ideas that existed within Star Wars specifically. And there was like little things that were referenced, especially in like the prequels, that weren't really explored or explained in the movie. So then I wanted to go and explain that after I did the research and found the answer, because I thought someone else might want to know the answer. And over the weeks and months that I eventually went from posting pretty inconsistently here and there to eventually deciding in 2016 that I wanted to post once a week, I started to see that people were really resonating with the Walt Disney Animation theories and ideas and breakdowns that I was doing, which was great because to me, Star Wars and Disney were things that I really cared about growing up, as well as Marvel. So it was kind of cool to have them all eventually come under one company. But once those videos started to take off, then I really started to focus more into animation. And I had seen over time through other channels like Super Carlin Brothers and others that were doing breakdowns of Star Wars that there was lots of people talking about breakdowns of comics, and other mediums. Some people going deep into different segments of animation, like Pixar specifically with the rise of the Pixar theory. But I felt like I really wanted to explore Walt Disney Animation as a fan of the parks, where a lot of the IP that I grew up with in the parks was based around The Lion King, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid. And so I wanted to explore that. And that's kind of what I've focused on over the past few years, is breaking down and examining these iconic feature films.
No, it's fantastic. There's so much that goes into the development of all the stories and all the little details. And yeah, it's just like the other day I was revisiting your Lilo and Stitch series. It's like, it's so, it is fascinating to like think about, character backstories and what isn't told directly, but is kind of shown in little bits and pieces here and there. And, being able to gauge, what happened to this character in the past that led to this. And especially with like Nani's backstory and Myrtle, why is she so mean and stuff like that. It's all really interesting stuff, because it's kind of like the kind of stuff that if you have a animation friends in a group, it's all kind of like you have that spur of the moment. Hey, why do you think that character did that in that movie? And then you go, I don't know, maybe it was this. And you start going down the rabbit hole of possibilities from that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is, there's certain times where answers to questions are buried within the story or in external media, like in comics or a series or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I think it's so fun to piece together everything that exists in the world and try to infuse the real world into the animated world, to try to piece together what was happening and what was going on, to try to make sense of it and to have more clarity and to show that the thought process that went into it. Because there's certain films that I really think are really beautiful and have a lot of depth to them, like especially Lilo and Stitch, I think is a great example of it, where the story is so rich, even though it was technically made on a budget. It's, it stands on its own in a really unique way. And I think it still is unique in the way that it depicts like sisters and relationships and depicting family. And I love being able to have the chance to take a topic and be able to explore those human ideas through animation.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add my 2 cents in here. I think that seems to be the changing, like, Disney specifically, but other companies are picking up that people really want that natural exploration of lore. And, especially with all the streaming services where they can just pick an IP that people like and kind of delve into it in its own, like, series with not as lot of, physical consequences, physical with an F, not a PH, but, and I think that's really interesting, but at the same time, it seems like quality is kind of hit or miss depending on the teams that are in charge of specific things. Like, for instance, Lauren and I talk a lot about The Lion Guard and how The Lion Guard is kind of in comparison to the original film. And, I wish, like, Disney, for instance, had a similar kind of Star Wars-y feel where everyone's talking to each other and seeing how they fit into canon. So it's interesting to see how the medium is kind of developing with the rise of more accessible media and, huge chunks of it too. So.
Yeah.
And if I may, particularly excited because this technically ties in to your interest. I'm sure you probably already know about it. Is Disney Plus going to have all that new content that weaves into the Society of Explorers and Adventurers lore from the parks? Because they're going to have that whole Magic Kingdom cinematic universe that they're going to plan out. So I think Jungle Book might even be tied into that as a start. Or not Jungle Book, Jungle Cruise. Sorry. But there is that possibility of them further branching out into more Disney lore and how everything is connected, even in the parks. It's kind of like Kingdom Keepers. Anybody remember that book series?
I read it. It was weird.
I liked it. I read most of the books up until I think I'm halfway through like the final original book, but I really enjoyed those growing up.
Yeah, it was a novel concept. That just punned myself. But it was I remember in high school reading the first Kingdom Keepers. I think it came out of like a friend's recommendation that I was able to start reading it. They're like, "Oh, borrow it from me and give it a try." And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so cool!" So it's almost like that, as if they could possibly. I remember they were in a while talking about potentially adapting Kingdom Keepers into a movie series, but that never came to be. It would have been great though. But I guess the Magic Kingdom cinematic universe is the replacement for that.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting. I think it's a very cool idea to adapt a lot of the park's lore into something that can be watched and enjoyed, because there's a lot of interesting ideas that exist in the parks that lots of people can't enjoy because because the barrier to go to the parks is so much higher. With Walt Disney Animation, it's very interesting because it seems like the Walt Disney Animation canon is put up on a pedestal, but there's not a lot of work that goes into expanding the films after they're created. It doesn't seem like there's a continuity there because they just have teams going to the next project constantly. Where in Lucasfilm, there's more of a continuity between everyone because they mainly focus on one universe, and that's similarly to Marvel as well. Marvel Studios, but Walt Disney Animation is not very focused, especially with them sometimes giving, or historically giving, the extension to their films to Disney Television Animation or Disney Toon Studios. There's definitely a discrepancy creatively between those two. And I think that can be good or bad, because there's times where shows like Tangled the series pops up and is able to just go wild with the story and do something really incredible. But sometimes, if there's not the creative team that's built up that, is able to use elements from the original or is restricted by the concept that's being pitched or desired, it can really, rein in the ways that the characters and the world can continue to expand. But hopefully with Disney Plus, we'll get to see some great stories come together that do justice to the canon that they're referencing.
Yeah, I think, it and that seems to be like a thing depending on the market. Like when we had the direct-to-DVD sequels, it wasn't so much about, the quality of the story. I mean, sometimes we got exceptions. Like I really love Bambi 2, even though it's not as mentioned as much as Cinderella 3 and stuff like that. But sometimes we got exceptions, but it seemed like they were solely about making like some type of cohesive story with the pitched like assets of the original, if that's what you want to call it, and not really, and just getting it out there and it's there and not really thinking of the aftermath of like, well, people seem to like this, but, was this the best move, long term? And that seems to have been a no, from what I could tell. So, and now that we have Disney Plus, it just seems like there's going to be a higher tier of making cohesive content because people can just watch one after the other, and those noticeable things that are like lacking in comparison are going to be much more noticeable now to the general public, and not just like creeps like us who just watch Disney movies all the time and don't have any friends.
Yeah, and I think one weird thing about the whole idea of sequels and spin-off shows and everything like that too is that oftentimes it really isn't supported very much by the marketing teams and the original animation studio themselves and the parks. Like those, it feels like they're created and then they're completely in isolation and are never really referenced much after that. The Lion Guard did include elements from The Lion King 2, so it felt like it was part of the world, even if there was some interesting inclusions of lore or extrapolations from the magic that was originally put in The Lion King. It took a lot of liberties in that respect, but it still felt like it was respecting, to me at least, the world that was established in the first and second movie, and tried to do some interesting things with it within the boundaries of a Disney Junior show.
Yeah. And yeah, like for Lion Guard, I personally enjoyed the ride. I after a while, it was just kind of like you kind of give up on trying to have like go, wait, what about this? How does this messes up the timeline of lore? You know what? This is kind of like a separate canon in a way. So I'm like, it's like, I kind of just I don't want to think too hard about some of the moments, but otherwise it's like some of the other ones did kind of tie into it pretty well, and I do understand they were trying to do something entirely different with something that was already established, especially with like weaving in a magic aspect. I do like where this third season went. I wish they could have gone more, but I'm glad that they did what they did with season 3, because they were willing to go on the darker route. They were willing to show the kids aged up and, freaking angsty Kion. Teen angst. Yeah, it was... Yeah, there's a lot of things, again, that, if you're a hardcore Lion King fan and have paid attention to a lot of that stuff in the past, and even have it's funny, I had to go to, when I remember years ago I visited Disney TV Animation and by adjacent Disney Toon Studios when I was in college, and I remember asking about Copa, about the how he tied into the lore, and they're like, oh yeah, those weren't like officially like licensed books, so they're not canon. I'm like, what? So Copa doesn't exist? Nope. But Kion does. Yep.
That seems suspicious. Like my whole thing is just tie it all together, man. Like people remember that, but anyway. We're a little off topic.
I think it would have been cool to see them try to tie in, even if they weren't officially canon. It would have been nice to see little homages to those books that they originally had, the Lion King 6 Adventures, but, you know.
Yeah, that's one really kind of disappointing thing about the canon after it's created, is that it doesn't feel like the story overall is respected long term, that there isn't thought about continuity. And while, you know, it's kind of a recent idea of establishing canon that can be referenced for years and years to come, you know, it was something that has been a slow build up. And I think that animation is becoming, especially in Western animation, is slowly getting to the point where it's being respected more by the companies that make them. So hopefully things like introducing characters like Copa won't happen in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's hoping.
And I like, again, it's not really so much spoiler territory as it is part of Lion King canon, obviously. But for them to approach it in a Disney Junior show was the aspect of death and allowing somebody to, and watching somebody pass on in the show. It was like, I remember the episode when it came up and it had a disclaimer saying, you know, that's what was really chilling to me, was seeing a disclaimer before a Disney Junior episode.
Absolutely.
Going like, this talks about death. This talks about people passing on. So watch with your kids if you feel like they're not going to be, if they need to have things explained, or if they're going to be too scared, to just sit with them and try to help them understand, and that it's a natural thing. So it's like, I'm like, wow, I don't think I'd seen any other Disney Channel shows, or Disney Junior shows in particular, try to do that, because no other show has that as part of their, at least in Disney Junior, no other show has that as part of their lore and as part of their world, that death is a thing. So
yeah, I thought it was so super cool to see something like that take place. The idea of seeing a warning, like that was wild. I really respected where the season 3 went, as you mentioned. I thought it was a very cool adventure, and it definitely had the most number of episodes that I didn't just reference or wanted to see parts of, that I like really watched all the way through. It felt much more mature towards the end of the show, and it's cool that it got to kind of grow with the audience, which I think is done really well in Star Wars shows like the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, that the show gets more intense and more mature and attempts to tackle deeper themes as the show progresses. And I think the Lion Guard did a good job of doing that, and I don't necessarily know if I've seen something similar out of Disney Junior like that before. So I think it was very cool to see.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially when they were already touching upon aspects of souls coming back in a way. Of course Mufasa comes back in from the clouds, but then they also touch upon freaking Lava Scar. Lava Scar. But that's already pretty much foreshadowing to, at least in a Disney Junior show aspect, of like, okay, well, yeah, they're gone, like they're dead, but those are their souls coming back to talk to their respective parties, in supernatural ways. So it's like, okay, when season 3 rolls around, it's getting into more mature tones, and the kids are aged up into more like preteen, teenager. I want to say teenager, and they're already addressing some more adult aspects, and it was about time that they did that, and I think they did it very tastefully and appropriately, and even I was kind of like choking up at the scene. I'm like, I don't know, it's funny because when you're binge watching episodes too, it's hard. You have to let things sit, especially with episodes like for Lion Guard. You have to let, so that you kind of know this character for a little bit before they die. But even I was still tearing up on it because it was just how it was handled. It was incredible. But anyway, sorry, a little off the topic.
It's like, welcome to the Lion Guard podcast.
I was gonna ask though, I guess on a relative tangent, what have been some of your favorite theory series that you have worked on?
I think some of the standouts for me are definitely my Tangled the series and Tangled episodes, as well as Lilo and Stitch. I really loved Lilo and Stitch. Like, that was the first movie I remember seeing in theaters, and I really enjoyed the series. So it was really cool to be able to look at all of the lore, all encompassing, and see how it worked together. And Tangled the series was just such a wonderful show that it was super fun to be able to talk to other fans that were getting excited about it. I think Tangled right now I've talked about the most on my channel, with The Lion King actually being second. So all three of those were a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, Lauren.
We had Chris Sonnenberg on as one of our early guests on the podcast, and so and I think going through your channel, I believe you also talked with him too on your podcast. So it's nice to have that little link. Tangled link between us.
Yeah, Chris Sonnenberg was really cool to be able to pick his brain and hear about his thought process with the show and seeing how he built up the characters. Yeah, Tangled has risen as one of my favorite worlds. Rapunzel's now one of my favorite princesses, really because of Tangled the series.
Yeah, and I was watching. Words are hard. I'm going to try to word this correctly. I think the arcs of Tangled the series are kind of the future, if of Disney kind of making lore that is adding on to the original, like, because from my understanding, like, when Chris was developing the show, he had a good amount of freedom, like, at least starting out, as far as, like, giving all of these characters themes and adding Cassandra, which I think was a really good, interesting intro to the lore, as well as I think also my favorite thing is fleshing out Rapunzel's parents, because we get a lot of implied emotion with them. They don't have any speaking lines in the movie, for those who don't remember. They just have emotional beats and sad looks and things like that. So but we already know a lot about them just from the events of the first movie, as far as, like Frederick kind of mourning, and trying to save his wife and doing basically whatever he needs to do, and that having consequences. So, I think that's what series should do, is they have, kind of, this basis of these characters without really having them a lot in the source material, but, having whole episodes where two characters who maybe didn't spend a lot of time in the original show or just kind of exist in the same world kind of loop over and interact with each other, I think is really interesting, and it's really a good, fleshing out of those characters specifically, because they can kind of exist with these very polar opposites of each other and interact with them. I don't know, kind of just rambling, but
no,
also able to do it through song. I mean,
yeah.
They were able to bring back Alan Menken for the song, so that was
that was legendary.
That was like a macho move right there to bring him back.
Yeah, that I think the music is one of the things that, and all the original voice actors, and having Chris, who worked in Walt Disney Animation Studios, and bringing references and ideas that were initially established in the development of the movie, bringing all of that together really gave it something that was really powerful. Like the idea of Chris, setting up the overarching arc and the key tentpole moments for the series before it was greenlit, I think was just such a good idea. They definitely took the story into new directions as things got developed, but the biggest moments that were the most shocking and the most impactful were always going to happen. And I think that's something that's definitely not done enough or appreciated enough, because executing on a vision like that allows the story to just be driven so much more. And truly, the way that Tangled the series was set up, developed, and like brought together with the big, especially hour-long musical episodes, is the reason that Tangled the series is one of my favorite things that has been released by any division of Disney or any studio in recent years. It just really took the fairy tale story and did some very interesting things with it in a different format with a series, and it just allowed audiences to connect with the characters in a much deeper way than they ever could have. And I hope they continue to capitalize that and bring together leaders who have a vision for these characters and respect them and want to create good stories. I hope it's not just coming up with a few ideas and putting something down and not really thinking about the ramifications of what the characters are doing or what they're thinking. Like, I think that's something that has been weird with some of the sequels that have come out recently by Disney, is that it feels like the characters are either going through a very similar thing to what they did in the original movie, or they're not doing something that feels within character. And Tangled the series, it felt like the characters were just continuing on their adventure.
Yeah, especially where it takes place in the storyline. It makes complete sense. And actually, it's a decent window of time to focus on between the ending of the first movie and then and then pretty much the Tangled Ever After, the wedding short. So it's like, I mean, that's a huge window of time to work with, and allows that flexibility for being able to play with all the ideas that they wanted to do for those characters. And it's like, to your point, it's like they had all these ideas pretty much in their head already and were already drafted out, and they were like, now we can finally kind of use them. So yeah, it's really cool, especially when you had arcs for each individual character, and Cassandra is like one of those, deeply impactful characters, and I'm glad that she was a part of it, and I'm glad that she was a part of it in such a dramatic way, and plus also when she's played by God, it sucks when I'm trying to remember her name.
Eden Espinosa.
But she was, Eden Espinosa. That's right. Because I was like, it's funny, years ago, I remember seeing her actually perform at a church service. It's kind of like a Small World thing. She was just singing there, and I guess she had just been Elphaba on at one of the Elphabas for Broadway. So she had just I guess she was just on break and she sang at a church service. But anyway, but it was cool to see her being involved in, and plus bringing that energy and that kind of that similar pained, dramatic backstory and existence to that kind of energy to Cassandra, especially with how much trauma she had been repressing from her childhood and not even realizing it. It's so, yeah, the show went there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I like Tangled too.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know that there's a lot to go into, especially with a show like that. What were some of your most difficult or most complex theories to kind of thread together, or maybe the most difficult properties to work with?
Just overall, or specifically like Entangled?
I guess overall, because I am curious to see, because I know you're very passionate about Tangled and very passionate about Lion King and very passionate about these particular properties. It's like kind of like, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it wasn't hard to like thread something together for one of those. So was it one of those, or was there another property? Maybe even, because I know you've branched into non-Disney stuff as well. Was there any one of those that was the most difficult?
The two that really come to mind are early on in the Lion Guard and Entangled the series. Both introduced characters that we knew for sure would not be seen later on, but were still in existence. So making my theory about what was going to happen to Kion and then where Cassandra would end up during Rapunzel's wedding were ideas that I had no clue how I was going to necessarily approach them, but took some time to do some research, like especially in the case of like the Lion Guard, and trying to figure out what makes the character of Cassandra who she is, and trying to figure out how those two characters could exist in the next step of their stories, since they're both wedged between 2 points that we already aware of. In the case of Kion, I thought that it was going to be something about him having to leave the Pride Lands. Like, I didn't think he was going to die or anything like that. And that kind of came true, that he had to go to the Tree of Life. And then with Cassandra, I thought she was going to become the captain of the guards like she had always wanted, and then would be watching over her best friend on her wedding day. That was where I thought it was going to go. But of course, that was before Cassandra began to go dark. And that, I mean, I guess that's another theory as well. That was an interesting one that I remember dealing with. But towards the end of season 2 of Tangled the series, there's this warning that someone is going to betray Rapunzel. And I thought it was Cassandra from looking at everything that had existed. But in that theory, like, I proposed that idea, but I didn't really want to believe it. So even when things weren't necessarily lined up in her favor, I was like, it still could be, it could still be the mysterious warrior from the Dark Kingdom. Like there was some allusions to that, which put a little bit of doubt in my mind, but of course it ended up being Cassandra in the end.
No, that's not true. That's impossible.
Yeah, it was gripping. That's one of the most memorable television moments that I think I've really ever experienced, is seeing Cassandra grab the Moonstone and then just being forced to wait until season 3 finally began. It was quite the cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's with both shows, it's really interesting to see where they all took their ideas, and again, trying to fit it into where this if they were trying to weave in these characters as part of canon, where were they after, like if we're trying to sandwich these in between this and that, or have it be a solid continuation, where are they going? I think they handled both in the way I figured. I'm like, okay, well, if it's Kion's destiny to be a leader, it's not going to happen in the Pride Lands, because he does have the qualities to be one. So I guess it's going to have to happen outside of it. And plus, it's implied you don't see him again after, even then, it's like Lion King 2, they tried to explain his absence. I thought it was kind of funny that they're like, run to the Pride Lands. Yeah, Zera's attacking the Pride Lands. And they're like, okay, gonna cross frickin' Pangea to go there. And then they get there. Oh, yeah, she's dead now. Like, oh. Like, I just thought it was kind of funny, like, expecting him to cross all the land that they had traveled. They're looking for these different the Moja Kamoja stones for these to find the Tree of Life, and they're like, okay, you got time to bypass all that, cut straight forward through back to the Pride Lands, and it's like, you realize you had to cross like multiple continents or something, right, to get here.
Yep. Both shows eventually found a quick loophole of how to travel quickly, even though it took a very long time to travel initially, with the mastering the roar of the elders, and then eventually getting Rapunzel a hot air balloon to be able to cross the whole world again.
I personally would love to see what they do with Vitani, because when they dubbed her as leader of the new Lion Guard, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, why don't we play with this? And then it's like, oh, it's just for the finale.
My dreams are crushed.
Well, the thing is, she had all the leader qualities just like Hyan did too. It's just her. The only difference was that they had different upbringings. But at the same time, from her clan, from the outsiders, she had to become a leader in herself, especially after losing Zira. But it showed how strong she was as one of, not only as her daughter, but as as somebody who redeemed herself at the end. And so like, hey, she can actually be a pretty solid leader, even if she is like a little rough around the edges. She still has those qualities. So, and she's worthy enough to be leader of the Lion Guard, apparently. So, I mean, yeah, why not play with that?
Yeah, bringing in like Vitani in the final moments of the show, I think just really showed how smart the Lion Guard got, especially in season 3, of tying everything together. And I'm not as up on the history of the creation of the show, but I really liked how moments like that could be comparing Kyan to Vitani and seeing how Zira made an impact in her kids' lives and how that differed from Simba and his kids. And there's a lot of cool moments like that, exploring what happened to the hyenas after the original Lion King, and seeing like a lot of different locations like the Outlands more, and acknowledging how the leadership of the lions interacted with their subjects. There was a lot of cool ideas that got the chance to be explored. Do I think that those ideas could have been explored in an even more dramatic and impactful way if it would have been geared more towards general audience instead of a younger audience? I do think that, but of course, I was pleased with the limitations the show was under.
And considering this is all spawned from back when you think about it, when the Lion King itself was deemed the inferior movie project to work on at Disney, going like, oh, Pocahontas is going to lead us into the future, and then Lion King is just a kids movie. Ha 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 ha. So it's just like from the moment that movie came out and Mufasa freaking dying on screen, I think it was already established that you could go a way more mature route with it if you were to make a series out of it. It's just like, because it has those Shakespearean dramatic pieces. I say that deliberately, obviously, because of the whole Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet parallels that we get in those movies. But because they have those aspects in them, you could very easily delve into. You could do more of what season 3 did, but for like an entire series, and have it get progressively darker. But the unfortunate thing is, it was immediately put in as a Disney Junior show that had to begin with the audience being really young. That's the target audience. But that, again, the smart thing they did was grow with the audience and have the characters grow with it and have the mature things come in later. I think it just sucks that we only got one season of that.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Disney Animation goes about telling these stories, because they are now going to be in charge of the series themselves, or at least Moana and Tiana to start out with. It'll be interesting to see what shows they'll create based off of series that they've already done spin-offs for or created shows like The Little Mermaid. It feels like The Little Mermaid should be explored a lot more. There's a lot of cool, locations and ideas, and the idea of being in the ocean is like, it's just such a captivating world, and Ariel's a captivating character, but she's already had a series. She already has had 2 spin-off movies. I've got a feeling that we'll mainly see shows based off of franchises that have been successful in recent years, especially at the start, but hopefully over time, some more of the legacy material will get a chance to shine too.
Yeah, definitely. that's why I really was excited when they announced for Moana and for Tiana to both have their own series. Especially when you think about, like, it'll be interesting to see where they go with Tiana's, because first of all, I just think she needed more attention anyway. So I'm open to whatever they decide to do for her series. With Moana, it's already a seafaring adventure, movie that she came out of. So you have and plus you have Maori culture, and you have their legends and their myths and their creatures and their gods, and it's like you have all of this to play with that you can't fit into one movie. It's perfect for a series, ideal even. So yeah, I'm really excited about both series, but yeah, especially because I love both Moana and Tiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there too. I love both of them. I'm excited to see what it's going to be like when the shows start to air.
I'm excited for more Tamatoa memes.
I'm sure Shea Frillis will be happy to have more crab.
Yeah. I don't ask for a lot in this world. But yeah, I'm with you guys there, because there's a lot of movies in general in the canon that are getting more of a shine because of the general access of Disney Plus. Like, I've just been seeing, I've mentioned this before, but I've been seeing a little bit more Black Cauldron stuff here and there, like in the mobile apps, and just how they advertise it. So I am kind of curious how the streaming platform will kind of reinvent some of those things that the company was like, oh, now we have to deal with this, but now it might get a different approach, I guess, comparatively to what it got before. So
yeah. And then I know that with all the Disney properties that get all this coverage and attention, what are some, maybe because I know you've delved into to DreamWorks lore in particular. You've delved into Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and those kinds of theories. What are some other content you might consider outside of Disney that you might develop theories for?
There was a point where I was kind of interested in diving into some aspects of SpongeBob SquarePants. I was really captivated by like the family tree of SpongeBob. I started doing some research about him, but then I found out that like Nickelodeon has done a really good job of making kind of like lore YouTube specific videos that like go into the family tree of all those characters, and they've even started doing what seems to be like theories. It's very cool. So it feels like certain markets like that, and like Avatar: The Last Airbender too, the social media team behind them are like doing all of like the full story types of videos for their characters. It's really cool. So I considered Nickelodeon, but that seems to be a pretty like worked through niche. At least a lot of the surface ideas that I had seem to be covered by them a lot. I'm interested in things like Star Wars and Marvel as well, and I've dabbled with that throughout the years. I guess one thing that I'm interested in is to watch the Hotel Transylvania series. I haven't seen that all the way through, or really any of it yet. I've just kind of been aware of it. But to tap into that, I think could be fun. If the stories are something that really intrigues me, it mainly comes down to suddenly, watching these shows or series or experiencing something that feels like there's something there that I want to talk about that gets me really excited. I think the first DreamWorks theory I did was about Shrek, which Shrek is definitely one of, if not the largest DreamWorks franchise. And then after that, I got really into How to Train Your Dragon. And when those properties pop up that are really impactful and really resonate with me, that's what draws me to them and lets me or drives me to branch out more. I'm not necessarily sure if there's anything else that I'm like thinking of soon that I want to branch into, but yeah, it's just kind of keeping my finger on the heartbeat of the entertainment and animation world and seeing what gets me excited. There's even times like that within Disney though, with shows like DuckTales, is that I released one video because I was enjoying the show, and then once that video gets some traction and people seem to be excited about it, that just gets me more excited to dive into the world more because I know that people want to see more videos about that. So it's often a feedback loop, is that if you try something different or you talk about a franchise and it really starts to click with people, that always gets me really excited and confident to dive into it more.
No, definitely. Yeah, and considering DuckTales I think it's going to end like in March, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's
have,
ending
like, a
soon.
series finale in March. Jeez, it's so sad. But yeah, they really went all out in trying to like flesh out. I mean, they took again the foundation and ran with it, and then also tied it back into comics and all of that stuff for DuckTales, which was, I think, is fantastic, and also tying that into the Darkwing Duck universe, basically making one giant Saturday after the Disney afternoon universe, which I know they're trying to make a thing too, because I think they're bringing back Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers and all that stuff. Makes me wonder if Tailspin's on there, but anyway.
Yeah, well,
that's a whole other thing right there that could be done if they make more content for it. Be that whole Disney afternoon universe.
yeah, I know they had a Tailspin character appear in one of the episodes.
Don Carnage.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if they actually like go through with it.
Yeah, it's interesting too because over the last few years, I feel like the DuckTales fans have like latched on to this world and the way it connects and everything like that. But even though Darkwing Duck feels fully established and is able to kick some butt within Duckburg, there's been some rumors that there's going to be a Darkwing Duck show developed for Disney Plus, and from what I'm aware of, they're not bringing back the original DuckTales team. So it sounds like they're going to go in a completely different route, even though the character was just utilized. That's where it seems like it's such a disservice because people are already committed to this world. And if you just would continue the animation style and a new creative team or that was built off of what was already established or had a respect for it, or you have those showrunners to pick up a new show, like I think it could be something that would be really compelling for people to watch. But it seems like it's just gonna go down its own direction most likely.
And in a way, I feel like they could have gone much further with DuckTales had they more quickly moved it to Disney Plus, because as streaming services are the way of the future and regular TV is kind of dying out, that affects viewership, and that's what they're looking at as viewership. When meanwhile the online communities are all abuzz about the shows. And I mean, they have to always take that into account as well. But unfortunately, it seems like so many look at the viewership and it's like, if they're not watching it on television, then it doesn't matter. But it's like, if you move it over to Disney Plus, you can manage it there, and you can grow the base, and you can have them binge watch, and you can have them plus when they're making all these series that are exclusive to Disney Plus, where they're going to have where you could have multiple episodes made and you release them week by week, as they do with like Mandalorian and stuff like that. It makes it it turns it back into television, but it makes it in a way that now is becoming more and more accessible to people. And plus they can monitor. I feel like it'd be easier for them to monitor just their streaming services versus television. And that's why they're dropping their Disney channels and stuff in different countries right now.
Their Disney channels.
Yeah, well, like Disney, when you think about like Disney Channel France, Disney Channel, this and that, it's like, I think even so, they're adding Miraculous Ladybug to Disney Plus at some point soon, because it's already being broadcast on Disney Channel in other countries, and I can't remember if the States, maybe they did in the States as well, or it was a different channel.
I think it was on Nickelodeon for the States.
Yeah, but in other countries, it's on the Disney Channel. And so somehow they may have secured the rights where they're going to be able to have it exclusively on Disney Plus. So there's that, and so more people can binge watch that kind of stuff there. That's another one. That's actually a really good series to think about with theories and lore and stuff, because as it keeps growing and growing, as more and more, as more charms and more miraculous are discovered, and their powers are being tampered with and stuff like that. It's kind of like that's actually a one I'd like to see if anybody wants to cover that, is miraculous lore. So
yeah, that's a series that I've seen referenced a few times in my comment section as requests for Miraculous Ladybug. Personally, I haven't seen much about the show. I haven't really gotten into it or started it or anything. And to reference back with your point of the weirdness of executives right now, I feel like there's this weird thing where, like, on television, all the value is how many concurrent people can you watch at specific times. But then there's also this weirdness of you release shows at unconventional times and you don't market them, but you still expect them to get viewers onto them, and they're only viewed like one time. It really just seems archaic, and I can't believe really that they even put much value into viewership of cable anymore. It seems like it should be scrapped as soon as possible.
I agree. Yeah.
Especially when they're making decisions about DuckTales, or shows like it, where you have the second season on Disney Channel and then you send it back to Disney XD where there's less subscribers to that channel, and you suddenly are hoping that it's going to be able to get anywhere near the viewership of the original second season. I don't understand how they think the show is possibly going to be able to succeed when the distribution is so horrible. It's astonishing that they're like, that's contributing to the reason we can't do a fourth season or do a spin-off or anything like that. Even though I think if it was heavily advertised all over Disney Plus, I think it would do great.
Yeah, it
exactly.
seems like it falls into the cycles of the executives at the time, or at when these shows are airing, not like losing faith, and just putting them on, well, we'll just put it on XD, and then they can actually cite the bad ratings as a reason for canceling it versus actually spending more money. Like, maybe it's a not that it justifies it or anything, but maybe it's just like an exhaustion of like, okay, we put all this money in, and this is what we're getting, and so this is the peak, this is the best we can do, so maybe it's time to move on or something like that. That's the only rationalization I can think of that they're doing that, and it's kind of scummy, and unfortunate, but again, hopefully with, the different distribution methods, and same thing with theater movies too, it's a movie's in theaters for 2 months, and that kind of justifies whether it's good or not generally by its grossing material. So I don't know, I guess we'll just kind of see what happens, but again, we're moving into more positive directions, and with the rise of social media too, fans have a bigger voice in those kind of things than just old snail mail back in the day and saving the shows via that way. So it's it's just interesting to witness all this and kind of see how the public is slowly having a bigger impact on what the studios are making and how much they're making, and all those things. So
Yeah, I agree. Disney Disney has had their long line of suppressing media that they just don't believe in, like Treasure Planet and Atlantis, and a lot of the films in the early 2000s that they just, I don't feel like they necessarily gave it a shot. Not necessarily that the films were going to become as massive hits as the films that had come before them. It was a very experimental time, but a lot of times there was moments in the early 2000s and now with Disney Channel that it just seems like, yeah, they just kind of give up on franchises or what they're creating and just let it fade away.
Yeah, that makes me so sad too, because especially for the creative teams, that's just like, you know, they put so much work into these things, and then just the network loses faith or something happens, you know, more up the top where they lose focus and they want to focus on something else. So there's a new branch of execs coming in, you know, all these things that just dictate like the go and flow of things. And, you know, it just frustrates me. Like, who wants to be in that position where, you know, you work really hard on a show and then the network's like, hey, we're doing this now, see you later. And
yeah, it makes sense to give up on projects that aren't working, but it seems ludicrous to give up on something that you haven't even put the effort into testing yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess one final question I would have is, what advice do you have for anybody that wants to develop and showcase their own theory content? Because I think a huge thing for you, I know I can tell, is where it comes from a place of passion, where you got to be passionate about what you talk about. Otherwise, people will see it's not as well grounded. But what other advice might you have for anybody who wants to be able to kind of do what you can do?
For sure. I would say that beyond passion, it's about finding your voice and then putting your voice into places where it can be absolutely amplified to the maximum degree. By that, what I mean is, when I was starting off on YouTube, as I kind of began, and I started to have success in talking about Disney, and that was something I was very passionate about. And what I did next was I doubled down and made more videos that were about Disney animation when Disney theories were getting pushed heavily by YouTube, that it was a very popular category with the rise of Pixar theory and all of the other theories that were being built up around that. It was a really exciting time. Right now, if I was someone who was starting from zero, and even is something I want to invest in more, is TikTok. Like, if you have theories, the best place, or really if you are passionate about anything, right now one of the best places to talk about your passion is on TikTok, because you're able to be exposed to so many more people. And at that point, if you build an audience there, you can send them over to places like YouTube or a podcast or a blog or something like that, depending on what, you know, if you want to monetize it or you want to create, you know, something else outside of the platform. But it's really combining those two things of finding your passion and your voice, how you're going to deliver that. And that only comes by creating a bunch of things and then putting that voice into a platform that amplifies it to the most massive degree. And typically that means going and finding platforms or different types of content that are doing well right now. And you can't worry about what might happen in the future with the platform or the type of content, whether you think vertical video that's less than a minute is going to last forever, or if it's just a fad right now. Regardless of that, there's an opportunity to gain an audience that cares about you and your passion. So that would be what I would say, is find a place that you can amplify your passion and your voice.
No, absolutely. TikTok is enormous now. And only continues to grow, and it really is like, in a way, it's like the new and improved YouTube on a shorter, with a shorter time frame to work with for videos. But being able to like share ideas and video content, and even like I've seen tons of animation being shared on TikTok as well. Like if you follow the chicken nugget animations as well, those are really good. There's so much that you can share on there. Cooking, I've seen tons of cooking tutorials and recipes on there. And then there, of course, there's a little pocket of the theorists that actually do hang out there. So definitely utilize platforms like TikTok, where you'd be able to, like you said, share your ideas or at least grow an audience and flag that audience to go to your YouTube channel or something like that. So it's like it's highly lucrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is I'm sure if you're getting into something like YouTube or social media and creating things, that you're a very creative person and you want to be able to express yourself through the art. But there's also an element of, you have to create art if you want to be a full-time professional artist. There has to be an element of creating art that people want to see, and you have to go where people actually are. And so being able to find a way to refine your vision to feel native and authentic on the platform is something that really can allow you to stand out and be able to accelerate your path to wherever you want to go a lot quicker.
Yeah. And that's really healthy advice, because I think sometimes people get into the ruts as far as, kind of going where they think things are going to happen, and then getting frustrated when they're not being as savvy as they should be as far as branching out to different social medias and all that fun stuff. Like, we just got a TikTok, 2 weeks ago to advertise the channel, and that's going relatively well. So, as well as just generally not, just focusing on what you're passionate about. And, I think the advice I've always give people is, I think the audience will come as long as you're smart about it, and being passionate and your qualities there. But, it's hard not to get, too invested in the subscriber numbers and get depressed when something's happening, or get really excited when something else is happening, because that's putting a lot of emotional energy on, just total random numbers sometimes. But yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to emphasize as well. Is you have to be insulated in whatever you're doing, to the point of not getting super excited when you hit 1,000 followers, and not getting super depressed if you're only at 1,000 followers. You just have to keep putting out the things that mean a lot to you, and continuously try to bring value to people that are out there. And what that really just means is create something that's either informative, entertaining, fun. It's just about creating something that people will actually resonate with. And so just being out there is definitely puts you in the best position to succeed. And I think that's something that I've been trying to think about more, than I've had conversations with, my friends and family about, is the idea of what would your ideal life look like, and taking the steps to try to get there. And that you have to be patient, and it might not take a year. It could take 10 years to be on social media. But if your ideal life contains that you would be able to talk about your passion and building up an audience, it's something worth being involved in, and seeing if it's something that you actually would want to do long term.
Yeah, and the internet gives us a lot of great opportunities and and healthy avenues to channel our passions. And I think my life has been a lot more fulfilled because I've been doing YouTube, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because you get a lot of a lot of just more general negativity sometimes as well, but you also have, much more immediate access to kind of be a leader to people versus just waiting until you're in the right place at the right industry traditionally. So it can be tricky. Can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah. I've been feeling that too. Like I don't like sitting around and hoping that something will be able to come my way out of the blue, but really trying to take more actions to try to get to where I want to be. And while, everyone starts at different places in their lives, it's just about like, for the most part, you have to rely on yourself to get you to where you want to be. There'll be people around you that support you and care about you. And you'll get help along the way for sure. But for me, if you want to follow your dreams, you have to make the decision to do that first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't just wait for nothing to happen, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Lauren, did you have any more questions? I think I'm good on my
all
end.
My questions answered.
Okay. Isaac, where can people follow you on YouTube and the social medias?
Yeah. Definitely check out my YouTube channel. That's Isaac Carlson. And also, TikTok and Instagram is a fun place to follow me too, which are both at Mr. Isaac Carlson, Mr. Isaac Carlson. And yeah, that all a lot of discussions about Disney movies and theme parks. That's what I've been thinking about and caring about recently. And it's a fun place. I talk about fun topics for fun people. So if you want to hop in to the discussion and share your passion for Disney, I would encourage you to check out the work that I do.
If you consider yourself a fun person, right?
Yeah, some people say, "Oh, I can't watch this. I'm not a fun person." I'm like, "Well, you're here. Like, you're watching the video. You must be pretty fun." Like, so
you're doing the first steps, right?
Yeah. Clicking on the video is a good first step.
Okay, and then if you're new to the podcast, I think we're approaching 50 episodes soon. I haven't been keeping track, or we're already there, or something. I don't know. Whatever. So
you just go on a recording spree and you just you count
I don't
afterwards
remember.
and go
I don't remember
in the aftermath.
anything. It's fine. So, we're on YouTube at Animation Kimmunication, and then all the podcasting platforms that people like in case you don't want to listen to it on YouTube, which is fine. So Spotify and SoundCloud and iTunes. We're released generally Wednesdays, 4 p.m. YouTube, 6 a.m. Eastern the rest of the time. Unless we don't have a show, then you can watch tons of other shows. Like, we got a lot at this point. So thanks again, Isaac. Sorry that it took so long to work this out, but I think everyone had a good time from what I could tell. So thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I thought it was a fun conversation about animation.
That's good. Hey, what other podcasts would we be able to talk Lion Guard on a consistent basis? Or Tangled for that matter, besides Chris Sonnenberg. So
he doesn't count. He worked on it. Like, that's cheating. All right. Have a good day or night, everyone. See you next time on the podcast. Metaphorically, I'm not seeing you, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, have a good any time of the day that you're listening to this. All right? Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Kimmunication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.